सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Okay, so yesterday we saw that before we even get into the specific values that Bhagavad Gita is talking about, we are just analyzing values as such, and why living with those values is important, as it creates a foundation for the larger understanding. So imagine you want to build a tall edifice and you have no foundation. How is it possible? So, if you want to know such a big truth, and if you have no foundation, if we are struggling with simple things in life where we are not able to be lucid, we live with so many opinions and beliefs and orientations that we are not even aware of, and our behaviors come from there. That is just not, then we wonder why we have listened to it and why still we don't get it, because first we actually need to build a foundation on which you can then gradually build more and more, and you can understand the whole reality. So values become the foundation, and the first thing we need to understand is that values need not be preached, because they are inbuilt in us. So that's why I'm not here to tell you what you should do and what you should not do, because you already intuitively know it. But what we are analyzing here is, even if we intuitively know it, why is it so difficult for us to follow it? Right? That is the whole big question. And what is coming on our way? So that is what we have to recognize. And when we recognize this, then what happens is we are not grappling in dark. You need to first understand what is going on before you can solve it, right? So what we saw is, what comes in the way is our conditioning. And what do we mean by conditioning? Conditioning doesn't mean that somebody has told you to be a criminal, or somebody has told you to be a dysfunctional human being, and nobody tells you that, right? So what conditioning means, that there is a certain conflict that is created at an early age where you are unable to process it, right? On one hand, you have this intuitive understanding, but around you, you see different behaviors, and you are unable to, you're not adult enough to assess that the problem is not with me, it is with somebody else. So what happens is we internalize a lot of things, and that internalization remains with us. Sometimes we are not even aware of it, and feeling of lack of love, feeling of isolation, a feeling of being a victim, right? These are all very deep, and you don't understand that nobody comes and tells you that I live like a life of a victim. Nobody says that, but they do. Right? That's why it is all within us, and it guides our behaviors, it guides our feelings, it guides how we act. So therefore, that all needs to be reshuffled and put in place before, which creates a foundation. So what happens is that conditioning is and what it yesterday's example, what we saw is, it's not one confusion, it's multiple confusion. So as I told you, by an example of this woman who was allowing herself to be abused, even though cognitively she's not impaired, right? She's quite intelligent, and she's independent, and she's not financially dependent upon anybody there. She has no children, she has no social obligation, and still that behavior continues, right? So that's why there has to be some reason behind it. And what we saw is, it has multiple things which are going on. the first thing that goes on is what you feel guilty for something that you're not guilty of. By you telling that somebody else is, what happens is somebody else's dysfunctional behavior, what happens is you begin to think that you're responsible for it. And that is something that it's a cognitive distortion which we need to correct, which is very, very important, right? The second thing that happens is, as somebody was mentioning, that there is fear. Right now, then you also, your mind projects that, oh my God, what if I leave and this person harasses me, or the person harms me in some way, or you can always hire somebody to run you off, and it may seem like an accident or whatever. So that means there is fear, there is guilt, there is shame. And there are so many, it's a multiple thing. You cannot actually, until you stay with it as to what is happening with you, what happens is, it's a network of things. It's not just one thing. So, and they are all connected. So what we need to do is, we need to disentangle it before we even free ourselves from all these orientations. And that is important, because imagine if you understand in Vedanta class that I'm free, but your emotional life, right, is constantly giving you these feelings which you cannot wipe off. Then you feel, oh my God, there is some problem with Vedanta. Oh, Vedanta is theoretical, it is intellectual, it is not, but it is not, or, there is no problem with Vedanta. Vedanta is telling the truth, but your internal life itself is fighting that truth that you don't realize.
Why? Why is it?
Yeah, because it's unaddressed. All these things are unaddressed, so they need to be surfaced, recognized. You need to undo those distortions. Then you clean the slate. And when you clean the slate, what happens is, the truth is the truth. It's very simple. And what happens is, it begins to shine through you. There is no obstruction.
I think we protect that because it's painful.
Exactly.
That's what it
See,
is.
this is why first it is painful, so you don't want to look into it. And Vedanta becomes the greatest escape. Why is the greatest escape? Because it starts by saying you are the whole. Then you feel, oh, if I'm the whole, why should I bother with this mind which is part of mithya? And then you have all these technical terms, right? Your mind is clever. Typical mind. Right? So then you give all these technical names because now you're equipped. Oh yeah, the whole world is Maya and this is all mithya and my individuality is mithya. So, but I'm the whole. But Ishvara is too clever. Will not allow you to enjoy the freedom. You feel something is missing. So you can repeat to the world, I'm free, I'm free, I'm free. But you can't run away from yourself. So that means we have to first have this relative freedom, then there is an absolute freedom. This is the order of Ishvara. Nobody can bypass it. So if you can't bypass it, right, you can't outwit Ishvara. So you better learn to flow with Ishvara. This is very, very important. This is how things are designed. You need to recognize. Can you fight gravity? You can't fight gravity, no matter how smart you are. But what you can do is work with gravity. And if you work with gravity, you can send rocket to the moon. Do you understand this? So gravity, what is the force of gravity? It will pull things down. But you need to understand how and why and under what conditions. Once you understand, when you get it, then what happens? You can actually send things up. And this is exactly our life. The more you try to dodge your individuality and try to deny it, more it will remind you that there is something that you are trying to bypass the system, and the system cannot be bypassed. So one has to be clever and work with the system and get moksha. And that requires a little time. So one thing is very important, and yesterday I was talking with Julie about so there is always this thing about the Western psychology and Vedanta, and how do they converge, or do they converge, or they don't converge. And one thing is very important to recognize, that any discipline which has in depth studied the mind, you cannot just totally brush it off. It's important to recognize that. Otherwise, what happens? We, the Indians, tend to, we are the superior and everything else is inferior. You don't want to create, these are all, our mind needs to feel important, strong, big. And the easiest way it feels important is what? Negating, looking down on things. And that only shows, when people come and speak to us, and the way they talk, we can tell how mature is the mind, how analytical mind, or how prejudiced is the mind. You can tell. So what it means is that there is, it's an amazing discipline, and it does research, it understands. But what is a possible problem? The possible problem is, there is a problem. We are not denying that there is a problem. But what is a possible problem? You have to give it its due importance, but at the same time understand the limitation. And what is that? That, sometimes your life story is the only focus, because they don't have larger understanding of the reality, like Ishvara. They don't have larger understanding of reality, like you are the whole. So everything happens within the fact that you are an individual. And then what happens is, your stories, now how many stories your mind has created. Suppose you're 40 years old, or 30 years old, or 50 years old. How many stories your mind has created about a life, about who you are, about what the world is, about who did what to you. There are infinite stories. So if you start digging in, what happens? There is a story after story after story after story after story, and then you feel, wow, yeah, I'm going deeper and deeper in my life and deeper, but you are going in circles, because you are not actually. What is the purpose of surfacing all of this? The purpose of surfacing all of this is not to be constantly in pain. That's not the purpose. But to face that pain, so that, right, and replace that pain, which has a vision behind it, a vision or some understanding, with a proper understanding. And as you replace your faulty understanding with proper understanding, that pain has lost its roots. It disintegrates. Really, this is very, very powerful. You can't dodge it, but you can work with it, and it goes. And it goes, that's why one thing that Swamiji used to tell us, people ask this, Swamiji, how do we deal with fear? And Swamiji said, the only way to deal with fear is to face the fear and not to dodge the fear. You have to have the courage to say, I have fear. And so what? I don't become less. I don't become small. I don't become... That's how it is. That's how human mind is. And then, right, what is the story that I'm telling myself which constantly gives me fear? So what happens is that story has to change. What we do is we try to modulate emotions. Or do you understand? But the emotions are just indicators of the stories that you have created, which then the mind gives those emotions as an outcome of those stories.
You're chasing phantoms, actually.
Actually, you are fighting phantoms. And Vedanta gives you the truth, which is the most beautiful story. What is the most beautiful story that you can hear in your life?
Free, that you're free.
You're free. And this world is not a bad place. It's not an evil place which is there to give you suffering. The world is nothing but divinity. And you are not separate from it. Tell me which story is more powerful than this story? And this is the truth. It's not just a story. Right. So the more and more you understand this, more and more your psyche assimilates this. And more your stories of limitations, they leave you. What happens? You blossom.
You don't feed them anymore.
You don't feed them anymore.
Yeah.
But you're not afraid of them anymore either.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
So, this is what living a life of values is, and that is what really one has to understand, that these conditionings sometimes make me behave in a way that it is quite different from my cognitive mind, which tells me something else. Now, what I do want to do is to look into a little bit more, because the more you understand, more you have ability to deal with what is going on with you, right? So you need to spend time. One is the conditioning and the conflicting behaviors, and you're not understanding, and then adding your own stories, which makes everything so complicated and everything so difficult, and the world, you become smaller and smaller, and the world becomes more and more difficult, and people become source of fear. So all kinds of things happen, right, within your own mental world. Now, the second thing is very important, that Swamiji talks about it. That's why I'm talking about it. What are the other things that, in addition to conditioning, what are the other things which do not allow us to behave according to our natural program? Anything else? Okay, excellent. See, let's analyze things. Very good. Now, so let's see what are the things which don't allow us. There is a natural program, which is Ishvara's program, that you can't erase. And that is what? I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to be cheated. I don't want to be lied to. And others also don't want the same. Then against it, because the behaviors are not always in keeping with this. So one thing is conditioning of what your parents tell you, right? And then there is a conflict. The second thing, as Yashodhara is saying, is culture. Very interesting. How can culture be against your natural program? Very good. Let's think about it. Right? Because you all have studied Vedanta, you all have done text after text. My job is not to stuff some more knowledge. My job is to make you think. Okay? So everything that you say, I will ask you why. And then what happens is, then the knowledge and what we think goes a little deeper. Otherwise, our thinking only remains superficial. It doesn't get depth. So, wonderful, it's true. But think about how can any culture be against the natural norm? Which culture has a legal system which says if you steal something, you will be rewarded? No culture. But still, culture is a problem. What are the problems?
Superiority from one culture above another.
Okay, so can you just little bit explain what you mean? And how can that go against the... Very good. I think you have a very good point, but just little bit elaborate. Tell a story so everybody can understand.
Yeah, well, it happens all over the world.
Yes.
The superiority wars are being fought for it. My religion is more superior, my culture is more superior. I mean, it's an incredible and disastrous thing, I feel.
Absolutely. Excellent. So what Malika is saying is something which is what a culture and how does it actually work? And that culture, she also added religion. So what everybody is told that my culture is suppose, right, the best. What is the outcome of that? Everything else is inferior. Now, if anything which is inferior, then you give yourself a license to be derogatory towards it. You give yourself a license to look down upon it. You give yourself because it's inferior. Now, what is your natural program?
This equality.
That I don't want to be hurt, others also don't want to be hurt. Do you understand? So, cultures don't tell you others are... Sometimes, mostly they don't tell you others are bad, but they talk about their own superiority. They think that they are the ones which are the best. And what is the outcome of that is everything else becomes not so good. This is a mindset. And what is very important is that even you can do this even for Vedanta. Vedanta is the truth, everything else is nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you understand this?
Yeah.
It keeps taking different forms.
The main problem is the ignorance of the leaders.
Absolutely. So the same person who says that, hey, this cultural superiority is silly, the same person says, I'm spiritual and others are material. The same person. Vedanta is the best and everything else is nonsense.
Right.
Do you understand this? So what has happened is you have changed your vocabulary, but you have not changed your mindset.
What is this very deep need to be superior?
Absolutely. What is this deep need to be superior is because we all feel small.
You feel inferior, yeah.
And we feel small. That's why you need to show that you're big. And what is your true... And that, please don't think that we feel small is a bad thing. Why? Because this is again a natural program which allows you to know your truth. That I'm the whole. If you did not have feeling of smallness, where will be your search?
Yeah.
Do you understand? So please don't even label it as a bad thing. Everybody feels small. And that is Ishwara's program which will allow you to go and search. Generally what happens is if the mind is not clever, it will find a way, right? Looking down on others and will make superior. But if you become intelligent, what happens is that paves the way for you to find, ask that question, who am I? If you did not feel small, there would not be an impetus to actually ask that question.
So the awareness of the feeling small is the first step to awaken.
Exactly. It's the first step towards your search for the truth.
Yeah.
So that's why you cannot even categorically say it's bad. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you get the problem, hang of the problem, then it's a blessing. But if you don't get hang of the problem, you'll find all these different methods to artificially make you feel that you are important and look down upon everybody. And this particular way, and people ask me, and please understand this, I'm not talking about superficial things, I'm talking about real things. People ask me this question, that now that you are a teacher and you teach so much and all that, when you go for social gathering and people are chit-chatting about, whatever. So how do you feel? Very common question.
Yeah.
And you know what I reply? I reply that, I leave my role as a teacher outside the classroom. I don't carry this air that, I'm a Vedanta teacher and I know the truth and I'm teaching the final reality and I'm a mature human being. And that's a fake. I mean, who did Einstein carry this whole air about himself? Oh, I'm the one who figured out some amazing things. Hey, people who actually know things are very humble.
Anyway, Einstein was dyslexic, huh?
Sorry?
Einstein was dyslexic.
Yeah. So, do you understand? I mean, so what I want to say is, what I tell them is, you know what? I leave my role as a teacher. Outside, I'm just like you all. And there is so much to learn from everybody. You start asking people questions. I'm fascinated. Somebody knows a lot about music, somebody knows a lot about art, somebody knows a lot about something that they have learned. There is so much to learn. But if you keep carrying this whole thing, your image, and I'm the one who knows it and all, and everybody else is material and dismissive, when will I, if I'm so uncomfortable with the presence of everyone, where will I find my freedom? So we have to change the way we look at things. And what is that? All that is here is Ishvara manifesting in so many different ways. It's a glory. Each one has some amazing talents. And each one has its own share of problems because of ignorance. This is the truth. Everything else is your creation. And different degrees of confusion in different areas. Somebody can be really good in something and confused in something else. But nobody you can categorically condemn. This is one thing we all have to learn. To make a mind which is free. Otherwise, they're just deep-rooted prejudices get different names. And we keep living from them. And then we wonder, when will I ever realize Vedanta? So, therefore, there are cultural things which are very important point, which is what a certain inherent human need to feel superior because we feel small. And the only way to feel good about yourself, the quickest way to feel good about yourself is to put others down. And as you do it, right, you're still caught in this, in your mental game. You are not coming closer to the truth. So, this is the second. What are the other things? Very good. I'm so happy that you're all thinking and participating. What else?
Education system.
Huh?
Education system.
Education system?
Yeah, like Korea.
Okay, yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. I see what you mean. Yes, absolutely. The education system, so that means we have this whole, as a systemic level, what the society tells you as what is successful and what is good. So what happens is, we not only we listen to what our parents and we see the confusion, we also kind of begin to subscribe to something which makes us feel important, like, oh, my culture is more important, or my religion is more important, or my whatever. But what happens is that there is a whole system out there who defines what we call who is a successful human being. And so therefore, Swamiji, our teacher, used to, he was very humorous character, very fun. He was talking very profound things, but he was not very serious as a human being. He made people laugh and everything. It was very nice. So what he said is that there is an ad in Indian TV, right? Like on TV. And the ad is about, the ad is showing complete man. And who is this complete man, right? So he's wearing suit, he has an excellent haircut, very sharp haircut. He has a BMW, a big BMW, right? And he has this beautiful woman with diamonds and, nice dress and all with him. And then this is what we call subliminal conditioning. Millions of people see this image of a complete man. Nobody has told you that. Do you understand this? Nobody has told you that you have to do this and you have to do this and you have to do this and you have to do this. But you see it and everybody else has bought it and everybody else is chasing it.
And he's white.
And and he's exactly in India, even though he's an Indian model, he has to be fair.
Amazing. Yeah.
So what happens is how many messages we take in without anybody explicitly even telling. And those ad people are very, very clever. So that's the whole society which has bought some picture of what is success. And can you be totally outside that society? Because you interact with everybody. So there was one thing that used to happen to me all the time. And that is, when I lived in Bangkok. So I used to work and I used to teach also. So sometimes I got introduced as somebody who was working with the UN as an economist, and people were like, wow. And sometimes I got introduced, some of my students who would say she's a Vedanta teacher, and I'm like, people are like, what? What is she doing, right? So you get this feedback all the time. And you can't say that, oh, I don't care. You can't say that. That's not true, because the mind is sensitive.
That is a very good topic. It's really my topic.
Yeah. So the mind is sensitive. You see it. That is this one thing that you say, the person is impressed, the other person is introducing you as in some other way, and they are like, dismissive, and you internalize it. And how do you internalize it? Oh, this is important and this is perhaps not so important. So what happens is, and we do it all the time, we rely on the feedback of people, and everybody has this innate need to feel as though I'm somebody and I need respect of people. So unknowingly we also buy some of it, we reject. If we are smart, some of it we also buy. So how? Let me tell you, right? So in a spirituality, it's a different context altogether. So we studied with, we were 50 of us who studied full time, right? So now imagine if you're working in a company, what will they ask you? Oh, so now which position have you reached? Have you become a CEO, or have you become head of the department, or whatever? So after we graduated, we would meet, we would all go and see Swamiji and we would meet. And what would be the question? Have you built an ashram yet? Right? How many students do you have? Same. Do you understand this? Right? That he is not talking about corporate. He is not talking about promotion. The mind is caught in the same things. and we don't realize it. People who say it, they don't realize it. And everybody else, oh, you have 300 students.
Yeah.
Wow. Everybody else.
Yeah. Amount, yeah.
So what it means is that this influence, right, within your group to be successful, right, that all is still there. The indicators have changed. So what it means is this is a deep education. Need to prove ourselves, need to be successful in whatever you do. Right? Any performer you see, then you ask, oh, how many concerts you do? It's always based on what you have achieved. What is the outcome? What exactly tangible have you achieved, rather than just appreciating the person with this talent. So that means we have pressures. So not only the cultural thing, the whole system has made us kind of buy into a given picture of what is successful, who is worthwhile, who is what, and then we all knowingly or unknowingly we buy into that. And these two things, what happens is initially it is all external, but later on you personalize it. So they are called personal values. They become your personal values without you knowing it.
Yeah.
Because you've internalized it. Some of it, not everything. You've internalized some of it. So these are the things which are going against the natural program. Quite a lot. Do you understand? Then you can understand why then people don't behave according to the natural order. Because too many things are going on simultaneously which you can't totally ignore. And what is one more thing I want you all to identify? One more thing.
Finances.
Yeah, finances come from this whole education, the system. This is also very funny because in India there are a lot of arranged marriages. So it's all transactional, right? Which family is it good or not? So now, what is the latest question? When you enter the aircraft, where do you turn? Left or right? What does it mean?
First class or...
Do you travel business class or economy class?
Or do you travel Vedanta class?
Another status.
What is this? Status, exactly, status.
But also on a more practical level, in the West now, I think there's a pressure on younger people to get a job.
Yeah.
And they're told their pension and they'll have to work for 50 years. And then they're married, with mortgage and all these
Absolutely,
it's
insurance.
very hard to have the space for...
Yeah, absolutely, right? So you're right. From the time that you're 25, you have to think about your pension when you are 65. And then you have to accumulate enough so that you can maintain a certain lifestyle, and then you have to incorporate the inflation that will, so the today's money is not going to be the same money the 20 years from now. So you're totally caught in this whole financial thing. Then healthcare, who will provide? As you age, you will need some more, So imagine at the age of 25, you're loaded with all these things which are considered to be rational, and they are not totally untrue, but that's what your mind gets conditioned into thinking like that.
And we don't think about that.
And we don't think about that.
And that's the only sure thing.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's so you're right. Finances is all this whole system we have created, which education and what is successful, how much finance you need, and for what reason, till what age, all of that, right? So it's all here. What else?
And also our societies are not made for that. That everyone is looking for his own freedom.
Yeah,
You have to
exactly.
fulfill your
Yeah.
duties and
Yeah.
your dharma, and then if everyone wakes up the next morning and says, "Now I only do something for my own personal freedom,"
Can you?
would all collapse.
So this is one thing that it's so true that Swamiji was saying that Indians especially, right, are very critical about sannyasis because they say, oh, these sannyasis are they are just dropouts. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to take any responsibility, and they just hang out and they just
Profit.
profit from others. This thing. So, in fact, it's very interesting. You may think that Indian society is all spiritual thing, but the modern society is very different, right? So, it's very different. You come to Bombay, some of you, and see how people live and what are they thinking. It's more Western than Westerners, you know. So, what happens is, but then Swamiji used to say, yes, sometimes there are scandals within sannyasis and all. It's true. We are not trying to deny anything, right? And because these sannyasis, if they have not made an effort to mature, their immaturity will come out in either having many relationships or going for money. It has to come out. It cannot not come out. Whatever is in here comes out through your behaviors, and it comes out through. So there are scandals, right? Now, but what he said is, which country in the world recognizes as a legitimate pursuit self-knowledge? India
India, yeah.
is the only country in the world.
Tibet.
Huh?
Tibet.
Tibet. Yeah, Tibet. Bhutan, perhaps. I don't know. And he says, yeah, you can see limitations, but don't get carried away only with limitations. See the other side. That there are people, we were in Rishikesh, and almost every day there is Bhandara. Bhandara is what all the sannyasis come to eat. And people come from all over the world to feed them. Feeding them. Hundreds of them. Because they think that is, somebody who's pursuing self-knowledge. If you can provide some support for them, you have really done your bit. What a thought. And there are people who are thinking like this. And there is a system which provides that whole infrastructure. So it has limitations. We are not denying, we are not being romantic about it, right? So it has limitations because human beings have limitations. But then that also, there is a beauty, there is a tremendous beauty. So you are right, there is no, otherwise the societies don't support people who want to pursue self-knowledge. And even in India, things are changing now because initially it was the kings who would support all the teachers, right? So the teachers lived very happily because they got state support. Now in the modern context, where is the state support? It's only the students who value, they have to support. Otherwise, you will not have any teachers.
It's very important that we see these things because you see every rejection that you get from society, from the culture, you tend to take it personal. It's again that feeling I am a failure and so many unhappy people it creates.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because they don't have the view, the overview. Yeah,
Exactly.
I'm really grateful that you, because of what we feel when people are doing, oh, you have only one master. I have 3 masters. or something like that.
Yeah, and it happens all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, all around us in different forms, right?
And different.
So, so there are many things. Now, one last thing that I wanted to point out, and that is a good point, that there is no infrastructure for people to actually even follow dharma, encourage people who follow dharma and pursue self-knowledge. There is no infrastructure. But the final thing that I wanted to say is something which is very interesting, and that is, suppose there is this human mind, which is, there is a natural program, but suppose you are abused at a very young age. You have been taken advantage of in so many different ways. What it does is, as a child, you feel a lot of pain, and you see, because the behavior is really deeply scarring you. But as an adult, what happens is, many of those people begin to repeat the same behavior. The alcoholic's child becomes an alcoholic. So there is a mind, what it does is that unless you are careful about it, the very thing that you did not like at all, right? You end up being that person.
Yeah.
So why? How does that happen?
Oh, you're still hooked on that.
You're still hooked on that, and the thing that gave you so much pain, right? It gave you so much pain. What does the mind do to cope with that pain? If you do not train the mind, what it does is, it becomes a sadist.
Oh,
Yeah.
A sadist means now you get pleasure from giving somebody else pain.
Some kind of revenge.
Revenge. Unspoken of revenge.
and it's a familiar environment.
And it's a familiar environment. So you stay within the environment which is familiar, but you turn it around, right? So I have to tell you a story. There was I don't know, some of you, she may have heard of this. There was a very famous case in India about, it is called Nirbhaya case. You know Nirbhaya case? Yeah, everybody knows about it. So there was a couple just outside Delhi, and they had gone for a movie, and then they were going back home. So they took a bus. Now that bus was not a running bus, so it was not in service. But these three people who were sitting in that bus, they were drunk, and when they thought they took a bus, so they got into the bus, and they three of them raped this woman, and she died. And they were so cruel, and the one was like 22 years old, the other one was 20 years old, the other one was juvenile, so 17 years old. So there was a whole big thing about the other two got sentenced. What to do about the juvenile? This person who is below 18, so he's not an adult, right? So I had a friend, she's a lawyer, and she was in a panel to decide what to do with this 17-year-old boy, who was perhaps the most cruel boy. Now what she told me is that, the whole nation was shaken, and everybody was so angry with these boys. And what she told me is that initially she also went with a lot of anger towards him, but as she was a judge, so she has to be a little neutral, right? She cannot have so many prejudices. As she started asking him about his life, she said, my God, I had to do, she also sentenced him, but she says that my whole attitude towards him changed, because I could see what kind of torture and what kind of abuse he himself had gone through in order to become this person. No normal human being can do something like this. So what does it mean? That he himself had to go through, had gone through so much. Then that is what happens, is you become a sadist. You've been so violated that then what is the reaction to this violation that you experienced and the pain that you have? Inflict pain on others. Exactly opposite of the natural program. What is the natural program? I don't want to be pained, and I also know others don't want to be pained. Traumas. That's why traumas, either you totally reform and become a very good human being, or you repeat the same behavior. So now, so that's why life is not as simple, and it's not a fairy tale life that we all have natural program and we work according to natural program, because there are so many forces.
And I want to say a little about what I experienced as a very strong conditioning. And that has to do with experience.
Experience, absolutely.
Especially in relationships. I find it so hard to be totally open in my relationship with Marion, because there's always this condition. Oh, what is she going to say now again and again?
Absolutely right. So that finding, you're talking about your relationship with yourself, or you're talking about relationship with others?
I'm talking about the conditioning.
Yeah, conditioning.
Very
Absolutely,
strong
conditioning. Exactly. Absolutely.
Nimaji. That's now 5 to 11.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, so now suppose we want to come back now. Next 5 minutes, right? Little homework for you.
Yes. Good. Perfect
Right.
timing.
So now we have understood what is going on, right? Now we have this amazing natural program by Ishvara, which is very naturally asking us to be intuitively understanding that we have to be a good, responsible human being. And then we have all these counter influences, right, which are very strong. They are not, they can't be ignored. Now, what is your job? And we all have taken these influences, right? We have lived our life 40 years, 50 years. We have taken on conditioning. We have bought into this education system. We have been confused by behaviors of our loved ones, and that has impacted us. We ourselves have accumulated some pain, right? And if we don't take care of it, we end up paining others and deriving pleasure without actually ever accepting it, right? So now what you need to do is, Vedanta is telling you it's important to live these values, but you have these conditions that you can't overnight free yourself from. Now you have to find a way that how slowly you are going to reduce all of this so that this can shine. What will you do?
To acknowledge.
Okay, we'll have to think about different things. How? Make it practical. Make it, you have to do this, what will you do? So acknowledgement is an important part, but what are the other things? How will you nicely guide your mind, right, without you understand now what is going on?
Awareness.
Yeah, but then you for awareness is the first step, but later on you have to reduce the influence of all of this, and you have to make this shine, and it's a journey.
So you have to take time with yourself.
It has to take. So we will little bit find. You think about, maybe you yourself. The first response comes awareness. We acknowledge it. This is wonderful. This is a starting point, but think about it a little bit more deeply and more realistically, beyond just these phrases that we have learned and we know. What will you do?
Self-love.
5 minutes. Now this is, think about it little more deeply than one word answers. Suppose you, let me give you, suppose you find yourself stuck with a lot of anger. What will you do?
A lot of.
anger, suppose. What will you do? So think about it,
Okay.
and after the break,
Yes,
right,
okay,
I will
that's clear.
ask you and give me a little deeper answer than just,
Yeah.
because otherwise what happens? We give one word answer and it's a right answer, it's not a wrong answer.
It's technical.
But it doesn't get the depth. Then we know that, we think we know it and we have done it, but we haven't actually done it. So I want it all to go a little deeper.
Personal, you mean?
Huh?
More personal.
More personal, exactly. More personal, more real, more even talk about your struggles. You see what I mean? Because it's not as simple as, you see what I mean? It is not like the textbook answer, right? So, okay. So, and after this, then I will go into individual values. Then, okay. After this exercise in the next class, the 20 values that we have started, that I will go into that. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.